They thought a $3,000 fine would break me. They thought they owned every inch of this neighborhood.
When the HOA president handed me the lien on my house, she actually smiled. She said, "If you can't afford the rules, maybe you don't belong here."
She was right. I didn't belong, but she made one critical mistake. She forgot to check the county zoning maps from 1920.
My lot wasn't zoned residential. It was mixed use. A forgotten clerical error that was about to become her worst nightmare.
I didn't just sell my house. I gifted it to the Iron Horseman Motorcycle Club. And the housewarming party starts now.
I've always been the kind of guy who just wants to be left alone. I work hard, I pay my taxes, and on the weekends, I just want to sit on my porch with a cold beer and watch the sunset. That's it. That's the dream. 5 years ago, I thought I bought that dream. I found a property that seemed perfect. It wasn't a cookie-cutter house in the middle of a grid. It was an older home, a farmhouse actually built back in the 1950s. It sat right on the edge of a brand-new, sprawling subdivision called Oak Creek Estates. The real estate agent told me it was a unique situation. My lot was technically part of the HOA because the developers had bought the land surrounding it, but the house itself had character. It had a large detached garage, a long driveway, and about an acre of land. It felt separate enough to be private, but close enough to civilization to be convenient. I signed the papers. I moved in. For the first month, it was paradise. Then I met Linda. Linda was the HOA president. She wasn't the screaming type of Karen you see in viral videos. She was worse. She was the sweet type. The type who brings you cookies while handing you a violation notice. The type who speaks in a soft, condescending voice, like she's a kindergarten teacher and you're a toddler who just wet his pants. It started on a Tuesday morning. I was getting ready for work. I'm a general contractor, so I drive a Ford F-250. It's a work truck. It has a ladder rack, a toolbox in the back, and a little bit of mud on the tires. It's not dirty, but it's a truck that works for a living. I walked out to my driveway, and there was Linda. She was standing at the end of my driveway, taking a photo of my truck with her phone. "Good morning," she chirped. She was wearing a floral blouse and a visor. "Morning," I said, unlocking the door. "Can I help you?" She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, I'm just documenting for the newsletter. We're really trying to tighten up the aesthetics of the neighborhood this quarter." "Okay," I said, not really paying attention. "Have a nice day." I drove off. I didn't think anything of it. 3 days later, I got the letter in the mail. Violation notice. Commercial vehicle. Rule 4. 2. No commercial vehicles, trucks with visible tools, or vehicles with signage may be parked in driveways overnight. Fine, $150. I stared at the paper. My truck didn't have a logo on it. It was just a white pickup. I went to the next board meeting to appeal it. I sat in a folding chair in the community center while Linda sat at the head table, looking down at everyone over her reading glasses. When it was my turn, I stood up. "Look," I said, trying to be reasonable. "It's my primary vehicle. It fits in my driveway. It's not blocking the sidewalk. I can't park it in the garage because the garage is full of my woodworking tools." Linda sighed. A long, dramatic sigh. "We understand, Dave. But Oak Creek Estates has an image to maintain. If we let you park a work truck, then the neighbor paints his house purple, and suddenly property values drop. It's a slippery slope. The fine stands." I paid the $150. I was angry, but I paid it. I started parking the truck around the back of the house, behind the fence where nobody could see it from the street. I thought that was the end of it. It was just the beginning. Over the next 2 years, Linda made it her personal mission to break me. It became a game to her. She measured my grass with a ruler. Literally. I came home one day to find her on her hands and knees on my front lawn. I got a $50 fine because it was a quarter inch above the acceptable limit of 2 inches. She fined me for my trash cans being visible from the street at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday because pickup was at 2 p.m. and I didn't get home until 5 p.m. She fined me for the shade of mulch I used in my flower beds. Apparently, midnight black was not on the approved list. Only cocoa brown was allowed. I felt like I was living in a prison that I was paying a mortgage for. I stopped sitting on my porch because every time I did, I'd see her golf cart slowly cruising by, slowing down as it passed my house. She was watching me, waiting for a slip-up. But the breaking point, the moment that killed the nice guy and woke up the demon, came last month. I had been planning a renovation on the old, detached garage. I wanted to turn it into a proper workshop. I submitted the plans to the architectural committee. I followed every rule. I used the right colors, the right materials, the right setbacks. They sat on the application for 6 months. Every time I asked, they said it was under review. Finally, I got a letter. Denied. No reason given. Just not in harmony with the community aesthetic. I was furious. I went to Linda's house. I knocked on the door. She opened it, holding a glass of wine. "Dave," she said before I could speak, "don't cause a scene. Why did you deny it?" I asked, my voice shaking. "It meets every single guideline." She took a sip of wine. "We just feel that, given your history of violations, expanding your footprint isn't in the best interest of the HOA. We think you'd be happier somewhere else." She said the quiet part out loud. They were trying to force me out. I went home. I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the wall. The next morning, I walked out to my truck. There was a bright orange sticker on the driver's side window, a tow notice, and on my front door, a certified letter. Cumulative violation assessment due to repeated infractions regarding vehicle storage, landscaping maintenance, and unauthorized exterior modifications. I skipped to the bottom line. Total fines due, $3,000. Failure to pay within 30 days will result in a lien being placed on the property. $3,000. I looked across the street. Linda was out gardening. She looked up at me, paused, and gave a little wave. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was quiet. It was the sound of a bridge burning. I wasn't going to pay, and I wasn't just going to leave. If she wanted me gone so bad, I would give her exactly what she wanted. But I was going to choose who replaced me, and I was going to make sure that for the rest of her miserable life, every time she looked at my old house, she would wish she had just let me park my truck in the driveway. I didn't yell. I didn't throw the letter in her face. I walked back inside, made a pot of coffee, and called my cousin Mark. Mark isn't a high-powered criminal defense attorney. He's a property lawyer who mostly handles fence disputes and title transfers in the next county over. He's cheap, he's messy, but he knows how to read the fine print. I drove to his office, a strip mall next to a laundromat, and laid everything out on his desk. The fines, the bylaws, the denial letter, and the deed to my house. "Can they do this?" I asked. "Can they actually take my house for $3,000 in fines?" Mark rubbed his eyes. "Technically, yes. HOAs have a lot of power in this state. If you don't pay, they lien the house. Eventually, they can foreclose. It's a racket, Dave. Your best bet is to sell. Get your equity out before they bleed you dry in legal fees." "I know I have to sell," I said, "but I want to hurt them, Mark. I want to ruin them." Mark laughed. "What are you going to do? Sell to a punk band?" He opened the thick folder containing the original deed to my property. He started flipping through the pages, humming to himself. Then he stopped. He frowned. He pulled his glasses down his nose and squinted at a yellowed piece of paper stapled to the back. "Wait a minute," Mark said. "What, Dave? When was your house built?" 1952, I said. "The subdivision was built in 2015, right?" Mark muttered. "So, the developer bought the farm, tore down the barns, built the McMansions, but they kept the original farmhouse, your house, intact to give the neighborhood rustic charm." "Yes, so." Mark tapped the paper. "They were lazy." He turned the map toward me. "When they rezoned the land for the subdivision, they changed everything around you to residential A1. That's strict. Single-family homes only. No noise, no businesses." He pointed to the square that represented my lot. "But they didn't change yours. Your lot is still zoned County General Mixed Use. It's a grandfathered designation from when this was all farmland and roadside stands." I stared at him. "What does that mean in English?" Mark grinned, a slow, shark-like grin. "It means you're technically part of the HOA for the common areas, but your land use is dictated by the county, not the subdivision. The HOA covenants restrict the structure, like you have to keep the house looking nice. But they don't restrict the usage as strictly as they think." "Mixed use," I repeated. "It means," Mark said, leaning back, that as long as you don't violate county noise ordinances after 11 p.m., and as long as you don't run a hazardous waste dump, you could do almost whatever the hell you want. You could open a daycare. You could open a dog kennel. I shook my head. A daycare is too nice. A kennel is too quiet. I looked out the window. A group of guys on motorcycles roared past on the highway. Loud. Rumble in your chest loud. Mark, I asked, could I sell it to a club? A private club? Mark shrugged. If it's a private social club, not a public bar, yeah. Zoning allows for fraternal organizations and social meeting halls in mixed use. I felt a smile forming on my face. A real smile. The first one in months. Write it up, I said. Get the paperwork ready. I'm going shopping. Finding the buyer was harder than I thought. I couldn't just list the house on Zillow with a caption, perfect for people who hate peace and quiet. I needed a specific type of buyer. I needed someone with cash, someone who needed space, and someone who didn't give a damn about what Linda thought. I spent a week visiting dive bars and mechanic shops in the industrial part of the city, 3 towns over. I felt ridiculous. A guy in a polo shirt asking if anyone wanted to buy a farmhouse. I struck out 4 times. Then, on a Friday night, I ended up at a place called the Sprocket. It was a biker bar, not the hipster kind with craft beer, the real kind. The parking lot was full of heavy cruisers. The air smelled like exhaust and brisket. I sat at the bar and ordered a beer. Next to me was a guy who looked like a mountain wearing a leather vest. He had a gray beard that went down his chest and a patch on his back that said Iron Kings MC. I listened. He was complaining to the bartender. Landlord is hiking the rent on the clubhouse again, the guy grumbled. Says the noise is scaring off the yoga studio next door. We got to find a new place, but there's nothing with a garage big enough for the bikes. My heart started pounding. This was it. I turned to him. Excuse me, I said. The mountain turned. He looked at me like I was a bug. Yeah. I couldn't help but overhear, I said. You guys looking for a place? A place with a big garage? No landlord? He narrowed his eyes. Who are you? A cop? No, I said. I'm a guy who hates his homeowners association. And I have a property that I think you guys would really, really like. The guy, his name was Tank, laughed. An HOA? You think we're going to move into a neighborhood with rules about grass height? You're crazy, man. That's the beauty of it, I said, leaning in. My lot is special. It's zone mixed use. You can park whatever you want. You can fix bikes in a garage. It's legally bulletproof. And the best part? What? Tank asked. The president of the HOA is a woman named Linda. She hates noise. She hates freedom. And she fined me $3 grand for my truck. Tank looked at me. He looked at his beer. Then he looked back at me. Does it have a bar? It has a big living room, I said. You can put in a bar. And the garage? Detached. Heated. Fits 6 bikes easily. 10 if you squeeze. Tank stood up. He was enormous. He slapped a hand on my shoulder. It felt like a bare paw. Show me the pictures, he said. I pulled out my phone. I showed him the aerial view of the house. The long driveway. The separation from the other houses. Tank scrolled through the photos. He stopped at the picture of my truck with the violation ticket on it. They find you for a work truck? He asked. Yep. That's un-American, Tank said. He looked at his brothers at the table behind him. Hey, Tiny, Doc, come look at this. I think we just found our new chapter house. I knew right then. The $3,000 fine was the best investment I ever made. The next day, Tank didn't ride his Harley. He showed up in a beat-up Ford Econoline van. He brought 2 guys with him, Doc, who looked like a retired physics professor who had gone to prison, and Tiny, a guy who was wider than my front door. They weren't wearing their cuts, their leather vests with the club patches. They were in T-shirts and jeans. They looked rough, sure, but not like a gang. They looked like the kind of guys you hire to move a piano or fix a septic tank. I walked them through the property. Tank wasn't interested in the crown molding or the granite countertops. He walked straight to the garage. He paced it out. Solid concrete floor, he noted. Good drainage. We can put a lift in that corner. My boys can work on their bikes here all winter. Doc was checking the electrical panel. 200 amps, he muttered. Enough for the welders and the sound system. They walked the perimeter of the yard. My property line backed up to a thick line of trees, which separated my lot from the cul-de-sac behind me. It was private, and the noise. Tank asked, looking at the McMansion next door, Linda's house. I told you, I said. The county noise ordinance doesn't kick in until 11 p.m. on weeknights and midnight on weekends. As long as you aren't blasting cannons, the police can't touch you. And the HOA covenants about quiet enjoyment, they apply to residential lots. This deed says mixed use. It's treated like a business. It's like living next to a gas station. They can hate it, but they can't stop it. Tank grinned. It was a terrifying sight. I like it. How much? I named a price. It was $20,000 under market value. I didn't care about the money. I cared about the speed. Done, Tank said. Cash. We close as soon as the title clears. One condition, I said. We have to do this under an LLC. A generic name. If the HOA sees Iron King's Motorcycle Club on the paperwork, they'll find a way to stall us. They'll sue for an injunction. It won't hold up in court, but it will drag this out for months. I want to be out, and I want you in before they know what hit them. Tank nodded. We got a holding company for the clubhouse assets. IK Benevolent Association, LLC. Sounds like a charity. Perfect, I said. As we were shaking hands in the driveway, I saw the curtains twitch across the street. Linda was watching. Of course she was. Tank and his boys climbed into the van and drove off. I waited about 30 seconds before Linda's front door opened. She walked across the street, pretending to check her mail, then coincidentally wandered up my driveway. Dave, she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. I saw some interesting gentlemen here. Everything okay? You're not in trouble, are you? She thought they were debt collectors. She thought the fines had broken me, and I was selling off furniture to pay her. I smiled. Actually, Linda, those are buyers. I'm taking your advice. I'm moving. Her face lit up. She actually clapped her hands together. Oh, that is, well, it's probably for the best. This community has certain standards, and it's been a struggle for you to meet them. It will be nice to have a fresh start for everyone. She paused, looking at the empty driveway where the van had been. Are they a family? I hope they have children. We have so many young families moving in. It's a group, I said carefully. A sort of organization. They do community outreach. They're very close-knit. They love outdoor activities. Oh, wonderful. Linda beamed. Maybe a church group? Or a nonprofit? That would be lovely. Something like that, I said. They're very excited to meet you. The closing process was the most nerve-wracking 2 weeks of my life. My cousin Mark handled everything. He rushed the title search. He pushed the escrow company. Every day, I expected Linda to swoop in. I expected an emergency board meeting. I expected a lawyer to serve me with a cease and desist. But Linda was too arrogant. She was so happy that I was leaving. She didn't bother to check who was coming. In her mind, she had won. She had bullied the problem neighbor out of the neighborhood. She was probably already planning a welcome wagon basket for the new owners. The only hiccup came when the HOA management company demanded the estoppel letter, the document stating that all my fines were paid before I could sell. You owe $3,000, Mark told me on the phone. You can't sell with the lien on the title. You have to pay it. I'm not giving her a dime, I snapped. Dave, listen to me, Mark said. If you pay it now, the sale goes through. Once the sale is recorded and the Iron Kings own the land. Who cares? You lose $3,000, but you gain the victory. Don't trip over pennies on your way to hell. He was right. I wrote the check. I hand-delivered it to the management office. Linda sent me an email the next day. Subject, closure. Dave, we received the payment. I'm glad you finally decided to take responsibility for your actions. Please ensure the lawn is mowed before the handover. We want the new owners to see Oak Creek Estates at its best. I printed that email out. I taped it to the refrigerator. It was going to be my souvenir. Moving day was a Saturday. I had hired a legit moving company to get my stuff out fast. By noon, the house was empty. The floors were swept. The keys were on the kitchen counter. I walked through the empty rooms. I had loved this house. I had wanted to grow old here. It made me sad for a moment. But then I looked out the window and saw Linda's perfectly manicured hydrangeas, and the sadness turned back into cold, hard satisfaction. I walked out to my truck. Linda was standing at the end of her driveway, holding a clipboard. She waved. I rolled down my window as I pulled out. "Goodbye, Dave," she called out. "Good luck." I stopped the truck. I looked her dead in the eye. "Linda," I said, "you won. You wanted me gone, and I'm gone. But you should know, the new owners, they really, really care about their rights." She looked confused. "Well, of course. We all have rights." "Yeah," I said. "Enjoy the quiet." I drove away. I didn't go far. I drove 2 streets over, parked in a cul-de-sac, and waited. I checked my watch. It was 1:55 p.m. Tank had told me the move-in was scheduled for 2 p.m. sharp. At 1:58 p.m., I heard it. At first, it was a low hum, like a storm approaching from a distance. Then it grew into a rumble. Then it became a roar. I drove my truck back toward the entrance of Oak Creek Estates, just close enough to watch from a distance. They turned off the main highway. It wasn't just Tank and his 2 buddies. It was the whole chapter. 30 motorcycles. Large, loud, chrome-covered beasts. They were riding 2 by 2, a formation of leather and steel. The sound was deafening. It echoed off the perfectly painted suburban houses. Tank was in the lead. He was riding a custom chopper with pipes that could wake the dead. Behind him was the van, and behind that, a flatbed truck carrying what looked like a pool table, a massive smoker grill, and a stack of speakers. I watched them roll past the "Welcome to Oak Creek Estate" sign. I saw a neighbor walking his golden retriever freeze in terror. The dog started barking. The neighbor dropped the leash. The procession turned onto my street. They slowed down, revving their engines, creating a symphony of thunder. I saw Linda. She was still standing in her driveway, holding her clipboard. She froze. Her mouth dropped open. She looked left. She looked right, waiting for them to pass. Surely, they were just lost. Surely, they were taking a shortcut. But they didn't pass. Tank swung his bike wide and turned directly into my driveway. The other 29 bikes followed him. They filled the driveway. They filled the front lawn. They parked on the grass, the sacred 2-inch-high grass. The engines cut, one by one, leaving a ringing silence in the air. Tank stepped off his bike. He adjusted his cut. He looked across the street at Linda, who was now trembling, her clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. Tank waved. A big, friendly, neighborly wave. "Honey," he bellowed, his voice booming down the street. "We're home." Then he turned to the flatbed truck. "Unload the smoker. And someone crank up the Skinnerd. We've got a housewarming to do." I put my truck in gear and drove away. I was laughing so hard I had tears in my eyes. But the real war hadn't even started yet. I still had one more role to play. I wasn't just the seller. I was the consultant. And Monday morning, Linda was going to find out that calling the cops doesn't work when the law is on the biker's side. I didn't go far. I couldn't. I parked my truck in a supermarket lot about a mile away and waited. I knew what was coming next. Linda wouldn't last 10 minutes. She wouldn't try to reason with them. She wouldn't bring over a fruit basket. She would go straight to the nuclear option. She would call the police. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, I saw a sheriff's deputy cruiser speed past the supermarket, lights flashing, siren wailing. Then another one. I waited 5 more minutes, then I drove back. I had to see this. I parked down the street again. The scene was chaotic. Blue and red lights were bouncing off the vinyl siding of the suburban homes. 2 police cars were blocked in the middle of the street because there were so many motorcycles. I walked up the sidewalk, acting like a concerned neighbor. Linda was standing in the middle of the street, pointing a shaking finger at Tank. Tank was leaning against his chopper, eating a rib. He looked bored. "I want them removed." Linda was shrieking. "This is trespassing. This is a disturbance of the peace. Look at the grass. They are parking on the grass." The deputy, a young guy who looked like he regretted his career choice, was trying to calm her down. "Ma'am, please lower your voice. We are determining the situation." He turned to Tank. "Sir, is this your property?" Tank wiped barbecue sauce off his lip. He reached into his leather vest. The other officer flinched, hand going to his holster. Tank just pulled out a folded piece of paper. "The deed. My name is Tank, representing the IK Benevolent Association. We bought this property this morning. Closed at 9 a.m. Here's the title. Here's the bill of sale." The deputy took the papers. He looked them over. He shined his flashlight on them. "This looks in order," the deputy said. He turned to Linda. "Ma'am, they own the house. They have a right to be here." "But the noise!" Linda screamed. The music, it's deafening. And the vehicles. You can't park commercial vehicles or motorcycles on the lawn in Oak Creek Estates. It's in the bylaws. Tank smiled. He looked at the deputy. Officer, you know the zoning on this lot? The deputy frowned. It's residential, isn't it? Nope, Tank said, popping the pin. Check the county map. Parcel 402B. This lot is zoned mixed-use commercial/agricultural. It's grandfathered in. We aren't a residence. We're a private club. A meeting hall. Tank pointed at the bikes. These aren't parked on a lawn. This is the overflow parking lot for our members. And the music? It's 3:30 p.m. on a Saturday. County ordinance says we can hit 85 decibels until midnight. The deputy looked at Linda. He looked at Tank. He looked at the bikes. He realized he was in the middle of a civil war, not a crime scene. Ma'am, the deputy said, handing the papers back to Tank. This is a civil matter. If they're violating HOA covenants, you have to take it up with your board or civil court. As far as the law is concerned, they aren't breaking any statutes. They own the land. They're allowed to have guests. You're leaving? Linda gasped. She looked like she had been slapped. You're just going to leave me here with them? Have a nice day, folks, the deputy said. He got in his car. He had to ask 3 bikers to move their hogs so he could turn around. As the police cars drove away, Tank cranked the volume knob on the massive speaker stack. Sweet Home Alabama blasted through the neighborhood, shaking the windows of Linda's house. Linda stood there for a moment, defeated. Then she turned and ran inside her house, slamming the door. I walked up to Tank. He saw me and winked. Nice place you got here. I yelled over the music. It's got potential. Tank yelled back. Needs more beer. The next 6 months were a masterclass in psychological warfare. I stayed in touch with Tank. We'd grab a beer every now and then, and he'd give me the updates. It was better than any reality TV show. The HOA tried everything. First, they sent fines. Thousands of dollars in fines. Unapproved signage. The Iron Kings put up a banner. Unapproved exterior paint. They painted the front door black. Noise violations. Tank didn't pay a dime. He had the club's lawyer, a guy named Slippery Pete, who usually defended guys on assault charges, sent a letter back to the HOA board. The letter was simple. It stated that because the property was commercially zoned, the HOA covenants regarding residential aesthetics were unenforceable and discriminatory against a registered business entity. He threatened to sue the HOA for harassment and interference with business operations. The HOA board met with their own lawyers. Their lawyers told them the hard truth. Fighting this in court will cost you $50,000, and you might lose because of the zoning loophole. So the fine stopped, but the petty war continued. Linda tried to enforce the visual nuisance rule. She claimed looking at the bikers was lowering property values. She demanded they build a privacy fence to hide the activities from the street. She thought this would cost them money and make them leave. Tank complied. Oh, he complied beautifully. He built a fence. But he didn't build a nice, white vinyl fence like the rest of the neighborhood. He went to a salvage yard. He bought corrugated sheet metal. Rusty, jagged, industrial sheet metal. He built an 8-foot-tall wall around the front yard. It looked like the perimeter of a post-apocalyptic fortress. When Linda complained that the fence was ugly, Tank pointed to the bylaws. Section 8. 4. Fences must be made of durable materials and exceed 6 feet in height for security purposes. It's durable, Tank told her, and it's for security. We have valuable motorcycles back here. The view from Linda's living room window was now a wall of rusted metal. The final blow, though, wasn't the fence. It was the market. 2 months ago, Linda's neighbor, a nice guy named Bob who just wanted to retire, put his house on the market. He couldn't take the noise anymore. The bikers were actually pretty respectful at night, but during the day, it was a constant roar of engines coming and going. Bob listed his house for $650,000. That was the market rate. It sat for 30 days. No offers. Every time someone came to an open house, they would hear the Harleys next door, or see the Iron King sign, or see the rust wall. Bob dropped the price to $600,000. Nothing. Finally, he sold it for $480,000. The comparable sales data for the neighborhood, tanked. Because of that one sale, every house in Oak Creek Estates lost about 20% of its value overnight. The other neighbors turned on Linda. At the annual HOA meeting, they didn't yell at the bikers. They yelled at her. "You poked the bear." I heard one neighbor scream at her. "You harassed that guy Dave until he sold to a biker gang, and now my equity is gone. This is your fault." Linda, the queen bee, the iron-fisted ruler of the cul-de-sac, was voted out of office. It was a landslide. She resigned in tears. Last week, I drove by the old house one last time. I was on my way to my new place. I bought a cabin. It's on 20 acres, deep in the woods. No HOA, no neighbors, just trees. I pulled into Oak Creek Estates. The entrance sign was a little dirty. The flowers weren't as bright. The strict aesthetic was starting to crack. I rolled down my window. I could hear music, Rolling Stones, paint it black. I pulled up to my old house. The rust fence was still there, looking gloriously ugly. There were about 10 bikes parked out front. A guy was welding something in the garage, sparks flying. Then I looked across the street. There was a for sale sign in Linda's yard, and there was a moving truck in the driveway. I slowed down. Linda was walking out the front door, carrying a box. She looked 10 years older. Her shoulders were slumped. She wasn't wearing her visor. She looked up and saw my truck. She stopped. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just looked at her. She looked at the biker house, then back at me. There was no anger left in her eyes. Just regret. She knew. She knew that she had done this to herself. She had pushed a quiet man too far, and the universe had pushed back. Tank walked out his front gate. He saw me and threw a hand up in the air. "Dave," he roared. "You hungry? We got brisket." I looked at Linda one last time. "No thanks, Tank." I yelled back. "I'm just passing through. I'm going home." I put the truck in drive and rolled away. I heard Linda drop the box she was holding. I didn't look back to see what broke. The $3,000 fine was the most expensive bill I ever paid. But looking at the sold sign on my old house and the for sale sign on hers, it was worth every single penny.